The Emperor of Mankind goes by many names: the God Emperor, the Master of Humanity, the Revelation, Neoth, the Dark King. But one of his names that we often overlook is that of the Omnissiah. What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40K. In this one, we are going to be going over an excerpt from the novel Mechanicum that talks a little bit as to why the Emperor becomes known as the Omnissiah. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and dive into this 40K lore. It never rained on Mars. That thought was in Brother Verticorda's mind as he guided the battered bipedal form of Ares Lictor up the gentle slopes of Olympus Mons. Resembling a brutish mechanical humanoid some 9 meters tall, Ares Lictor was a paladin-class knight, a one-man war machine of deep blue armor plates, with a fearsome array of weaponry beyond the power of even the strongest of the Terran Emperors Astartes. Ares Lictor walked with an awkward loping gait, thanks to a stubborn knee joint that no amount of ministration from the tech priest could restore. But Verticorda handled his mount with the precise ease of one born in the cockpit. It never rained on Mars, except it was raining now. The brushed orange skies above were weeping a thin drizzle of moisture, patterning Verticorda's cockpit as he felt the cold wetness through the hard plugs in his spine and the haptic implants in his fingers. He realized that he too was weeping, for he had never expected to witness such a sight: the heavens opening and precipitation falling to the surface of the red planet. Such a thing had not happened in living memory, and on Mars, that was a long time. A shape moved in the clouds, and Verticorda halted his mount at the sheer edge of the Caldera's encampment with a release of pressure on his right hand. The machine reacted instantly. The bond he had forged with it for many years of battle was that of two comrades in arms who had shared blood and victory in equal measure. Verticorda could feel the anticipation of every moment in his sizzling joints and welds within Ares Lictor, as though it, more than he, was anticipating the glory of this day. Golden light flashed above, and the drizzle of rain became a downpour. Light suddenly burst from the clouds, dazzling and brilliant, and bolts of scarlet lightning danced like crackling spiderwebs. Verticorda almost lost his footing as he instinctively looked up. A mighty floating city of gold was descending from the heavens. Like a mountainous spire sheathed from the sides of some vast continental landmass, the city was studded with light and color, its dimensions enormous beyond imagining. A vast eagle-winged prow of gold marked one end of the floating city, and colossal battlements, like the highest towers of the mightiest Martin spire, rose like gnarled stalagmites from the other. Rippling engines flared with unimaginable power on the colossal edifice's underside, and Verticorda stood amazed at the technology required to prevent such a monstrous creation from plummeting to the ground. Flocks of smaller craft attended the larger ones, its dimensions only growing larger the more it emerged from its concealing clouds. "Blood of the machine," hissed Yelsik, rider of the knight at his back. "How can such a thing stay aloft?" By the time the knights reached the base of the cliff, the enormous craft had landed, its gargantuan bulk surely offset by some dampening field to prevent it from collapsing under its own weight, or sinking deep into the Martian surface. Roiling clouds of superheated steam and condensed gases billowed outward as they swept all over Ares Lictor. Verticorda smelled the scents of another world: hard radiation, the ache of homelands long forgotten, and the thin, aching cold of mountain air. He told himself it was ludicrous to sense such things from a ship that had just made the fiery descent through a planet's atmosphere, and yet they were there, plain as day. "Spread out," said Verticorda. "Flank speed." The knights loping alongside moved into a combat spread as they strode through the hot, moist mists. Verticorda felt no threat from the unknown craft, yet decades of training and discipline would not allow him to approach it without taking precautions. At last the mist thinned and Verticorda pulled up as the enormous golden cliff of the vessel's flanks rose up before him like a mountain of freshly deposited on the planet's surface. Its scale was awe-inspiring, more so than ever even the fastness of the Titan legions or the data mountains of the Temple of All Knowledge. Even the mightiest forged temples of Mondus Gamma on the Syrian Planum paled in comparison to the scale of this vessel, for it had been fashioned with deliberate artifice and not the combined forces of millions of years of geological interaction. Every plate, every sheet of the enormous vessel was worked on with the care of a craftsman, and Verticorda struggled to think of a reason why so many would labor for so long and with such devotion to ornament a vessel designed for travel between the stars. The answer came a moment after the question. For this was no ordinary vessel. This was a craft built with love, a craft built for being beloved by all. No ordinary man could inspire such devotion, and Verticorda suddenly felt an overwhelming fear that he would be in the presence of something far greater and far more terrifying than anything he could have ever imagined. A shrieking blast of steam vented from the ship. A colossal hatchway was lined in golden light. Huge mnemonic pistons, larger than that of a Titan, slowly lowered a long ramp, easily wide enough for a regiment of Gene Bulk Skitarii to march down. The ramp lowered with no sign of strain from the vessel, and the brightness within poured out, bathing the Martian landscape in a warm, welcome glow. Verticorda twisted Ares Lictor around on its central axis, and felt a shiver travel the length of his spine as he saw the entire rim of the volcano's crater lined with onlookers. With a thought, he increased the magnification through the view scope and saw thousands of robed adepts, menials, tech priests, logi, and workers gathered to watch the events unfolding below, though none dared approach within the swirling electromagnetic field that surrounded the craft. The huge ramp crunched down, and Verticorda squinted into the light blaze from within. A silhouette moved within the light, tall, powerful, glorious, and magnificent. The light seemed to move with him as Verticorda watched the figure descend from the ramp. A shadow fell across the surface of the plane on which the craft had landed. Though he was loath to tear his gaze away from this magnificent figure, Verticorda looked up to see a convex eclipse of darkness biting into the glowing outline of the sun. The light from the storm-racked skies faded until only the illumination came from this figure as he stepped onto Martian soil for the first time. Verticorda knew immediately that the man was a warrior, for there could be no doubt that this sublime figure had been mighty by battle. Verticorda felt the collective gasp from the thousands of spectators in his bones, as though the very planet shuddered with pleasure to know this individual's touch. He looked back down and saw the warrior standing before him, tall, clad in golden armor, each plate wrought with the same skill and love as had been lavished upon his vessel. The warrior wore no helm and was fitted with no visible breathing augmentics, yet he seemed untroubled by the chemical-laden air of Mars. Verticorda found his gaze dwelling on the warrior's face, beautiful, perfect as though to see beyond the armored exterior of Ares Lictor and into Verticorda's soul. In his eyes, his so very ancient eyes, Verticorda saw the wisdom of all the ages and the burden of all knowledge contained within them. A crimson mantle flapped in the wind behind the giant warrior, and he carried an eagle-toppled scepter clutched in one mighty gauntlet. The golden giant's eyes scrutinized the blue-armored form of Verticorda's mount, from its conical glacis to the aven-tailed shoulder plates upon which the wheel and titan bolt symbol of the Knight of Tarantus was emblazoned. The warrior reached towards him. "Your machine is damaged, Tamen Verticorda," he said, his voice heavy and yet musical, like the most perfect sound imaginable. "May I?" Verticorda found himself unable to form a reply, knowing that anything he might say would be trite in the face of such perfection. It didn't occur to him to wonder how the sublime warrior knew his name. Without waiting for a reply, the warrior reached out, and Verticorda felt its touch upon the joints of Ares Lictor's knee. "Machine, heal thyself," said the warrior, the purpose and self-belief in his voice passing into Verticorda as though fusing every molecule of his hybrid existence of flesh and steel with newfound purpose and vitality. He felt the warmth of the warrior's touch through the shell of his mount. Gasping and trembling vibrations spread through its armored frame of plasteel and ceramite. He took an involuntary step back, feeling the movements of his mount flow as smoothly as they ever had. With one step, he could feel Ares' lictor move as though it had just come out of the assembly lines, its stubborn knee joint now flexing like new. "Who are you?" he gasped, his voice sounding grating and pathetic next to the mighty timbre of the Golden Warrior's voice. "I am the Emperor," said the warrior. It was a simple answer, yet the weight of history and the potential of a glorious future were carried in every syllable. Knowing he would never again hear these words spoken with such meaning, Verticorda and Ares' lictor dropped to one knee, performing the maneuver with a grace that would have been impossible before that of the Emperor's touch. And in that moment, Taman Verticorda knew the truth of the being standing before him. "Welcome to Mars, my lord," he said. "All praise to the Omnissiah." And with that being said, we come to the end of yet another 40K video. So here you see the entrance of the Emperor towards becoming known as the Omnissiah, the machine god, the Martian god that all the Admech, the Skitarii, venerate. The Emperor has been known to become a warrior of untold might, prowess, psychic ability. He's able to resurrect, he's able to empower his followers, and here we see that he's also able to ascend the machine spirit to a form of near perfection. So what does this mean? Why hasn't he done this to achieve that perfection on his golden throne, to heal his body and resurrect? That cannot be said. Unfortunately, we don't have any means of knowing why the Emperor hasn't achieved his apotheosis while sitting on the golden throne. Perhaps he is indeed straining too much of his power, trying to keep the Astronomicon lit, trying to protect Terra from the terrors of the warp, and blessing his saints during the battle against chaos. But if you guys like what you heard here, please let me know what you think the Emperor will be doing once he attains his body back to normal power. Do you think he's even going to attain this form, or do you think he'll succumb to the Dark King and become the 5th god of chaos? Let me know in the comments, and also don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you guys can get more Warhammer 40K videos. But that's all I got for today. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.